And next, I'm particularly excited about my next guest because I'm a huge West End fan, as you may know. I love going to the theatre. Be it one of London's massive, prestigious theatres like the Theatre Royal Drury Lane, or somewhere even more intriguing like the Regent's Park Open Air Theatre. And how they stage productions there in the open air is amazing. When was the last time you went to the West End, I wonder? And when you do you ever wonder about what's going on backstage to make the magic happen in front of your eyes? A brand new book called Beginners to the Stage, Please is out this month. And it's a memoir from a long-serving stage manager. Stewart Arnott takes the reader behind the curtains to the world backstage. And I'm delighted that he joins me now. Hello, Stewart.
Hello there. Good to speak to you.
Well, you too, sir. You too. And your book was thrust into my hand literally before I walked into the studio this morning. So I've literally only just managed to get through your introduction, but it's already whet the appetite enough for me to want to dive into it in great detail.
Oh, well, that's great. That's great. I'm delighted to hear that.
What a fascinating career you have had. Tell me where your own fascination with theatre came from, first of all.
Oh, well, I first was introduced to theatre in my teens, amateur amateur operatic society. That was my way in, as was the case for an awful lot of performers.
Yeah, me too.
A lot of, get your first taste of it doing amateur things. And I, absolutely loved it, found it thrilling and exciting, and thought, I would enjoy doing this for a living. Basically, I was thinking, I would be doing this in my spare time anyway. So why don't I actually do it for a living?
Great way to forge a career, that definitely. But you weren't tempted by the bright lights of performance?
No, I started off performing in those amateur shows in my teens and then at university, but I very quickly learned that actually for me the thrill wasn't being out there in front of the audience, it was being behind the scenes and putting it all together, making it all happen. That for me really was the thrill, the exciting part of it.
Now, in the introduction to your book, you talk about how London's West End really became a world leader in theatre.
That's right.
Because it didn't used to be, did it? We were very well known for our cabaret and our fantastic variety performances, but that's a long way away from the world-class productions that we see appearing in the West End today, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. To begin with, as you say, there was, variety and so on, music hall and so on in the early part of the 20th century. And then musicals, such as they were, tended to be fairly lightweight pieces here in Britain. And it was really when shows like Oklahoma came over from the States, they were just in a different league, and they just blew British theatre out of the water, quite frankly. And it took a while for British theatre to get to grips with itself and start producing shows of an equal calibre. But British theatre did get there, and before too long, Britain was really a world leader when it comes to, commercial musical theatre. And so, we sort of now, along with Broadway, we really lead the way in that field. And
there's a couple of names in the mix there that really led the charge, aren't there?
Well, absolutely. We're talking about Cameron Mackintosh and Andrew Lloyd Webber, the two big, hugest names. You couldn't, I do talk about them a little in the book. You couldn't talk about, the history of musicals in the West End without talking about those two. They really are the monsters of the industry.
And you,
that in a good way, of course.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, of course. And you could be accused of some bias, to be fair, because you became the stage manager for the Phantom of the Opera, produced by Cameron.
That's right. Yes.
But before we get to that, you started out, tearing tickets, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. That was a holiday job while I was at university. I just wanted something to do in my holidays. I needed to earn a bit of pocket money. And, I thought, well, I like theatre. I enjoy theatre. So why don't I see if I can get a holiday job? And that was my way into working in the West End, was just tearing tickets. As I say, during my university holidays, but that led on to other things. Before long, I was asked to man the stage door in various theatres, which I also did in my holidays from university. But then after university, I then went to drama school, actually to study stage management and technical theatre. I decided by then that I really did want to take it totally seriously and actually study and get a qualification. So then, while I was at college, I was also working in in the West End, still doing a bit of stage door keeping. I then moved on to crewing, and then on the back of that, was lucky enough to be offered some jobs operating the big sets. So all the big, huge bits of scenery that you see moving around, all that mechanism, I was operating those, and then eventually into stage management.
On what kind of shows? Can you give us some stories from when you were doing that?
When I was operating, the first show that really fired my enthusiasm was Mutiny, a musical by David Essex back in the 80s. I wasn't operating that, but I was just absolutely enthralled by all the machinery and how it worked to create the effect on the stage. And then a few years later, in that same theatre, I then operated parts of the set on Metropolis, which wasn't a very long-lived musical, but it was a huge technical show. And from that, I then went on to the original production of Miss Saigon when it opened at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane.
Oh, wow.
That was really something. That was a spectacular show. I started off on the crew there, but then moved into the hydraulics department. So I got to fly that famous helicopter as part of my job.
That's the thing, isn't it? That's the thing everybody remembers about that show, aside from the incredible songs and Lea Salonga's iconic performance. But I mean, the helicopter scene in that show, which is coming back, they're bringing it back on tour. Cameron McIntosh has revived it this year. But how they're going to do that on tour, I don't know. But anyway.
Yeah, I think they must have a very different version of the helicopter. Ours was very, very much built for that theatre. I must just say, I can't take total credit for this about flying the helicopter. I was the number 2 in the department, and the lady who flew it on a daily basis, Mickey, was an absolute genius at what she did. She absolutely, it was a complete art, the way she flew that helicopter every day, because it was manually operated. It wasn't all programmed. You didn't just press a button and the effect happened. It was literally joysticks and digital readouts. It was literally very manually flown. And she was in charge of that, and I covered for her on occasion. So that's when I got to fly it.
So many questions, so many questions. Obviously, through all of this, the spectacle, safety is absolutely paramount.
Definitely.
And I know it's all brilliantly managed from the get-go on paper before anything ever actually makes it to the stage. But you've got to be mindful of that every single night without fail, because the potential for injury is massive, isn't it?
That's exactly right. The potential is massive, but if things are managed properly and people are taught properly, people understand what they're doing and what the implications are if they don't do it properly, then that's how you keep people safe. Over the years, health and safety has become a much more prevalent part of working in theatre, and now it absolutely is the bottom line of everything you do. I always liken these enormous shows, and when I teach the big shows, I always explain this to people. I liken them to crossing a busy road, in that there's lots of stuff moving around and you can sort of predict where it's going to be and how it's going to be moving, but actually it might not. Something might go wrong. So you have to have your wits about you and be ready to react and know what to do to keep yourself safe.
Well, especially when a huge chandelier is crashing down from the ceiling towards you.
Exactly.
And not just towards you, but also the audience. How you stage manage the chandelier drop every night in the Phantom of the Opera.
That used to get checked every single day. The hydraulics team, we had an excellent hydraulics team on an automation team on Phantom, and they would do daily checks literally every single day as part of setting up for the show, making sure that all the bits on it were secure, nothing was going to fall off, that all the mechanisms were running safely. We would drop the chandelier a good couple of times at least before the show. So every day, every single performance, it had been tested very thoroughly before we got to it.
Stuart, I'm gonna bring in Miriam, who's called in, whose paths may have crossed actually, because I think Miriam is in Deptford. You worked on Phantom for a while, did you?
Well, most of the things you're talking about, actually, we've been doing our job, which nobody sort of knows that we do. That's a job. So we dye, print, paint, distress costumes for most of the West End shows. I think we've done cats, leotards for 100 years. You name it. Name it, we've done it. It sounds terribly big-headed. It's not, because you're covered in dye in a railway arch in Deptford. But I thought, you know what? I need to just ring and say this is something that quite a few people don't know about.
Yeah.
And I doubt we've ever had our paths I doubt our paths have crossed because we quite often don't know anybody.
Yeah, I have to say, our paths probably haven't crossed, but obviously we've been involved in the same world. I mean, we've both been part of making these shows happen in one form or another. You know, there's something I talk about in the book. One of the earliest things I learnt about theatre was how there are so many different strands of activity that have to be brought together and woven into the final piece to actually make the show happen. It's not just a few people who wander onto a stage and perform. There's so much more that goes on.
Miriam,
so
thank
really,
you. Thank you for your lovely call. I'm sorry, I'm going to be moving on because I need to just finish up with Stewart. There are so many things I need to ask you though, Stewart. You know, when you begun stage managing a show like Phantom, I mean, the responsibility on you there to ensure that a show that is full of special effects, but also iconic numbers and comes with such a high level of expectation from the audience that it's going to be perfect every single night. You must have taken that responsibility incredibly seriously.
Oh, absolutely. You really do have to be mindful that, you know, as you say, it's a very iconic show. People know the show. They know what to expect. So that's why I was saying, for example, the chandelier got checked so thoroughly every day. And not only the chandelier, every other piece of equipment, everything else we were using, everything was checked to make sure that we could deliver that show. Because, as you say, the audience really know what they're expecting.
Well, that's right. I mean, if the two-way mirror failed, what do you do then? You know,
we had a slew of plan Bs. I mean, literally hundreds. I literally couldn't recount how many plan Bs for all the little moments in the show. There was almost always a workaround. It was only if we had a really huge technical catastrophe that we would have to stop or alter the show in any major way. And part of my job was to teach all those plan Bs to everybody so that they had them at their fingertips. So at the drop of a hat, we could make a slight change and everybody knew what that change would be and how we would then join up with the rest of the show after we'd made that little change.
I mean,
there was an awful lot of that.
I have to say, Masquerade, the Act 2 opening sequence where they're all on the staircase and moving about, and it's just the most magical number, and then suddenly the Phantom appears at the top of the staircase. Oh my goodness, there are so many breathtaking moments. Big picture-wise, though, just for you, because special effects have become so integral now as part of the West End magic. If you go and see shows like Frozen or Back to the Future, or even shows like The Great Gatsby, where on now at the Coliseum, you know, the staging for that, I don't know if you've seen it, is absolutely breathtaking. Go and see it. It's got a couple of weeks left. Go and see it, because I think somebody like you would truly appreciate the effort they've gone to. Do you prefer the big mammoth productions like that, or do you also truly appreciate a show with such a stripped back set that barely moves, like a Curious Case of Benjamin Button, for example, and they leave it all up to the storytellers and the actors and actresses on the stage?
Well, certainly from a work point of view, the big shows with the huge spectacle, that's much more interesting from me, but that's not to take away from those much smaller scale performances. Maria Bjornsson, the designer for Phantom, always used to say that a performance without a set is still a performance, but if you take the performance away from the set, it's just a load of machinery whirling around.
Yeah, it's true.
So those little shows, in some ways those little shows can let you absolutely focus on the performances and the tiniest details of a performance, and you're not lost in a huge spectacle. So there's pluses for both sides, I think. Yeah. But as I say, work-wise, the big spectacle shows are what I loved. I thrived on those.
In all your years of going to see other shows as well, what's been the one special effect that you've sat there and thought, how did they do that?
There is a tiny little effect in, there was a show, The Lord of the Rings, at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane.
I saw it 5 times.
Okay. So now I'm not a huge Lord of the Rings fan. So the moment I'm talking about, I think, is sort of quite well known by Lord of the Rings fans, but I don't really know the moment. But it was a crowd of people talking. Somebody was delivering a message, and at the end of what they had to say, they just disappeared.
Yeah.
And it literally, I had no idea how they'd done it. I can think of maybe 10 or a dozen ways they could have done it. And normally when an effect happens on the stage, I can see how it happens. I know the mechanisms. I know the tricks. I know how these things are done. So I could give you a list of possibilities of how they did it, but I just have no idea. He was standing there talking. He finished his sentence and he was just gone.
I was dating one of the cast members at the time, and even he wouldn't tell me how they did it, I tell you. Anyway, that's another story. Stewart, I cannot wait to dive into the rest of your book. You talk about so many things that I've been fascinated by for years. Everything from...
Thank you. Well, I hope you thoroughly enjoy it.
Well, I can't wait. Everything from the quick changes that go on in the wings to, calling cast members who may be still outside trying to get a cheeky cigarette in between their scenes.
There's stuff about all of that in the book. That's all in there.
How fabulous. Well, you've shone a light on an area that we've so rarely get to see, as Miriam also pointed out. The industry around theatre is so big, and it's so important for London's economy as well, isn't it?
Absolutely, that's one of the points I make in the introduction, that it brings a huge amount. I mean, millions and millions of money of pounds into the economy. So it's hugely important, and not only for the money side of it, but the cultural cachet that goes with that. That keeps Britain on the world stage as a very attractive country, and I think that's important as well.
Absolutely right. I can't wait to read it. It's out now. Thank you, Stewart, for joining us on the programme there. Stewart Arnott, author of Beginners to the Stage, Please, available now in paperback form, $14.99, and it's out in a bookshop near you, and I'm sure available to download as well.